Some names are whispered with reverence backstage long after the curtain falls, not for their fame, but for the depth of their humanity and the originality of their genius. Before the world ever saw their names in shining lights, there was a quiet bond forged far from cameras and red carpets. A story too intimate for tabloids yet too unforgettable to stay in the shadows. In a city notorious for fleeting fame and fragile relationships, theirs was a love and friendship that rewrote the unwritten rules of Hollywood survival. How do two stars protect something so tender in a world that thrives on spectacle? And what does it really mean to build a love that outlasts the fame? Mel Brooks and Bancroft never tried to impress the world with grand gestures or dramatic headlines. Their story wasn't about the noise. It was about the quiet moments, the real ones. 2 decades after Bancroft's passing, Mel Brooks finally opened the doors to the deeply private world they built together. And in doing so, he offered not just a reflection of a remarkable actress or a legendary comedian, but a tribute to the kind of love most people only dream of, one built on respect, laughter, and the courage to stay human in the face of fame. Long before Mel Brooks became the comedy legend we know today, he was a kid from Brooklyn, scrappy and full of mischief. Life wasn't easy. He grew up poor, lost his father at a young age, and learned early on how to use humor as a way to survive. That humor carried him from the rough streets to the battlefields of World War II, where he served in the army as a teenager. Even during those dark days, he found ways to make people laugh. That instinct, to find light in darkness, never left him. After the war, he started out doing stand-up in the Catskills, slowly carving a path into television's golden age. As a writer, he had a sharp mind and a bold heart. Alongside Carl Reiner, he helped shape the landscape of American comedy, pushing boundaries with quick wit and unapologetic satire. His very first film, The Producers, dared to do the unthinkable, turning the horrors of Nazism into a biting comedy. It was shocking, outrageous, and utterly brilliant. The film earned him an Academy Award and marked the beginning of a career that refused to play it safe. Mel didn't just want to make people laugh. He wanted to make them think. With Blazing Saddles, he took on racism head-on, sparking controversy and conversation. Young Frankenstein paid loving tribute to classic horror. Spaceballs poked fun at sci-fi. And The History of the World Part 1 danced across time with absurdity and genius. But Mel Brooks was never just a provocateur. He was a craftsman, a storyteller, and most importantly, a man who valued truth. He wasn't afraid to ruffle feathers because he believed comedy could challenge power and expose hypocrisy. That belief stayed with him as he moved from screen to stage. The Broadway adaptation of The Producers was a runaway success, winning Tonys and Hearts alike. Even in his 90s, Mel's creative fire burned bright. He released a memoir, returned to writing, and offered new work with History of the World Part 2. But behind all the laughter and applause, there was always Anne. And Bancroft was nothing like the characters Hollywood wanted her to be. Born Anna Maria Luisa Italiano in the Bronx, she was proud of her Italian-American roots. She wasn't drawn to fame or celebrity. What she wanted was substance, challenge, and truth in her work. Her early role opposite Marilyn Monroe in Don't Bother to Knock caught attention, but it was the stage that truly called to her. On Broadway, she won hearts and awards with performances in Two for the Seesaw and The Miracle Worker. Playing Annie Sullivan, the fierce and determined teacher of Helen Keller, she captured a level of emotional power few could match. That role won her a Tony and an Academy Award. She wasn't just acting. She was revealing something raw and real. When she met Mel Brooks in 1961, it wasn't love at first sight in the way movies tell it. It was deeper than that. They met backstage during a TV show rehearsal. Mel was loud, funny, and full of energy, and was thoughtful, composed, and quietly magnetic. On paper, they didn't match. But in reality, they fit together perfectly. For more than 40 years, their marriage defied expectations. They weren't the kind of couple who posed for cameras or shared every detail. They lived privately, honestly, and with a bond built on mutual respect. Mel often said that Anne was the first person he trusted completely, and the only person whose opinion he truly feared. She would read his scripts and offer real feedback. If she laughed, he knew it worked. If she didn't, he'd go back and rewrite. And became iconic in 1967 with The Graduate, playing the unforgettable Mrs. Robinson. But the role came with misunderstandings. Audiences assumed she was much older than Dustin Hoffman, when in reality, she was only 6 years older. That false image stuck to her unfairly. Hollywood began to typecast her, offering roles that were older or one-dimensional, ignoring her depth and range, and spoke openly about the challenges women face as they age in the film industry. She called out the obsession with youth and beauty, and the way women over 40 were pushed aside. No amount of awards could protect her from the subtle, constant pressure to fit into someone else's idea of what a woman should be. Still, she didn't give in. She kept choosing roles that mattered to her. In The Turning Point, she explored the pain of past regrets. In Fatso, a film she wrote, directed, and starred in, she tackled body image and emotional vulnerability with rare honesty. These were not glamorous stories. They were real, uncomfortable, and human. And brought them to life with grace and strength. Even in smaller roles later in life, her presence was magnetic. In 84 Charing Cross Road, she portrayed quiet longing with such authenticity that it moved audiences to tears. Her final film, The Roman Spring of Mrs. Stone, was a haunting meditation on aging, purpose, and self-worth. And never chased the spotlight. She refused to be part of Hollywood's endless game of gossip and appearances. She didn't go to every party or show up on every red carpet. She chose her peace over popularity. To some, that made her seem distant. But those who knew her understood she was a woman of deep thought and quiet fire. She didn't need attention. She needed truth. Even in interviews, when she was asked about Mel, she always made sure people knew her work mattered, too. She wasn't just Mel Brooks's wife. She was Anne Bancroft, an artist, a thinker, a mother, and a force in her own right. Their son, Max Brooks, inherited that creative spirit. He became a writer in his own way, tackling the zombie genre with intelligence and imagination. It was a reflection of both his parents, the wild humor of Mel, the emotional weight of Anne. When Anne passed away from uterine cancer in 2005, Mel was heartbroken. But true to who they were, he didn't turn his grief into a public spectacle. He mourned privately. For a long time, he said very little. And when he finally spoke, years later, it wasn't with grand drama. It was with love, honesty, and a quiet ache that never fully faded. In his memoir, he described their life together without polishing it into a fairy tale. He talked about the laughter, the hard moments, the conversations that lasted late into the night. He remembered how she changed every room she walked into. Not with volume, but with presence. And he shared how even now, her voice still guides him. In his head, she reminds him to stay kind, to tell the truth, to never settle for easy answers. Mel never stopped working, even in the face of loss. But nothing he's done since has mattered as much to him as what he built with Anne. He says their relationship was his real masterpiece. They didn't crave fame or parties. They craved connection. Their happiest times weren't the ones with cameras flashing. They were the nights watching old movies, raising their son, sharing ideas, and laughing at things only they found funny. It was a quiet, steady love in a world that doesn't often make space for that. Today, when people speak of Mel Brooks, they talk about the laughter. And when they speak of Anne Bancroft, they talk about the power. But together, they offered something even more rare. A model of partnership that valued honesty over performance. Their legacies stand strong on their own, but the love between them adds something beautiful and deeply human to their stories. It reminds us that even in a world obsessed with image, the real story is often found in the quiet places. In the shared glances, the late-night talks, the willingness to be real. And maybe that's the lesson they leave behind. That greatness doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it holds your hand during a tough moment. Sometimes it rewrites a joke at 2 a.m. because someone you love didn't laugh the first time. Their story wasn't perfect, but it was real. And in that realness, we find something worth remembering. If this story moved you, if it made you smile or reflect or feel something deeper, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. There are more stories like this waiting to be told. Quiet, powerful, and full of heart. Thanks for being here with us today.